Hello and welcome to Whisper of History. Today, we're diving into the terrifying and disturbing story of one of Japan's most infamous serial killers, Tsutomu Miyazaki. Known as the Otaku Killer or the Little Girl Killer, Miyazaki horrified Japan with his heinous crimes in 1988 and 1989. His name still echoes in Japan as a nightmare from the past. But behind these crimes lies a story of darkness, emotional isolation, and a profound descent into madness. What could push someone to commit such atrocities? And what twisted tale lies behind Miyazaki's transformation into a killer? Let's unravel this dark secret together. Tsutomu Miyazaki was born on August 21st, 1962, in a small town near Tokyo. Though he seemed like an ordinary child, he faced major challenges from birth. Born prematurely, he suffered from a rare bone disorder that caused deformities in his hands. This physical difference set him apart from other children, both physically and emotionally. In school, he was often bullied and ridiculed because of his hands, which were so malformed that he had to use his wrists instead of his thumbs to write. At home, things weren't much better. How he developed a close bond with his grandfather, his relationships with the rest of his family were distant and strained. After his grandfather passed away, Miyazaki fell deeper into despair, losing his sole source of comfort and stability. These years of emotional neglect and isolation planted the seeds of the darkness that would soon consume him. The bullying and lack of affection in his childhood drove Miyazaki into a dark world. A lonely, ostracized individual, he immersed himself in horror-themed comics, manga, and anime. While otaku culture was a rising trend in 1980s Japan, Miyazaki's relationship with it went beyond casual interest. Otaku culture, a term used to describe individuals who are deeply engaged with video games, anime, and manga, was for many a fun hobby. But for Miyazaki, it became a psychological escape. He withdrew into a virtual world of fantasy and horror, further detaching himself from reality. As his mental health deteriorated, his fascination with bloody and disturbing comics grew. In these stories, he found a perverse form of normalcy in violence and cruelty, which would soon fuel his own dark desires. August 8, 1988, this date marks a dark day in Japan's history. On this day, Miyazaki committed his first murder, targeting 4-year-old Masami Yoshizawa. While she should have been safe among her family, she ended up in Miyazaki's clutches. He abducted her, taking her to a secluded, forested area outside Tokyo. There, under the cover of darkness, Miyazaki unleashed a brutal assault on the young girl. He showed no remorse as he took her life, abandoning her body in the forest before fleeing. When news broke of Masami's disappearance, her family could not have imagined the horror she had faced. For Miyazaki, this was only the beginning. He viewed this murder as a twisted ritual to satisfy his dark urges. Miyazaki's first murder was just the start of a series of horrifying crimes. His second victim, 4-year-old Erika Namba, suffered a similar fate. After abducting her, Miyazaki brutally ended her life and then went on to taunt her family. He sent parts of her body along with disturbing letters to her family, which struck terror into the hearts of people across Japan. His third and fourth victims, Ayako Nomoto and Koryo Kano met equally tragic ends. Miyazaki lured them away, isolated them, and then mercilessly took their lives. For him, each murder was part of a perverse ritual, a macabre display of his growing insanity. His post-mortem interactions with the victims' bodies further displayed his profound mental instability, confirming him as a grave danger to society. As Miyazaki's string of heinous crimes continued, Japanese police were under intense pressure to find the person behind these brutal murders. Public fear was at an all-time high, especially as news spread about Miyazaki's horrifying behavior, particularly the way he taunted the families of his victims. The police worked tirelessly, gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses, but Miyazaki was careful and meticulous. For nearly a year, the authorities struggled to get any solid leads on this elusive killer. However, Miyazaki's own escalating recklessness would soon lead to his downfall. In July 1989, a shocking incident involving a 5-year-old girl in a public park would finally expose him, marking the beginning of the end for this cold-blooded murderer. On July 23, 1989, Miyazaki made a critical error. He attempted to lure a young girl in a park, fully confident in his ability to evade capture. However, the girl's father saw Miyazaki approaching her and immediately confronted him. Realizing he was caught, Miyazaki tried to flee, but was quickly apprehended. Police officers soon arrived at the scene, arresting him on the spot. What the police discovered during their search of Miyazaki's home was beyond comprehension. Inside his apartment, they found a collection of disturbing materials, videos of the crimes he had committed, explicit horror manga, and, most disturbingly, photographs and body parts from his victims. The nation was horrified. The Otaku killer was finally unmasked, and his true depravity was revealed. Miyazaki's trial was one of the most widely publicized in Japanese history, drawing immense public attention. People were desperate for answers. How could a person commit such gruesome crimes? Miyazaki's behavior in court only added to the shock and horror. He showed no remorse, often smiling or appearing indifferent, and even claimed that he was possessed by a spirit at the time of the murders. His bizarre and detached statements baffled psychologists and enraged the victims' families. As the trial dragged on, the Japanese public grew increasingly frustrated and called for the harshest punishment. Miyazaki's trial brought Japan face to face with questions about mental illness, criminal responsibility, and the darker aspects of the otaku culture, sparking a nationwide debate. After years of appeals, Tsutomu Miyazaki was sentenced to death in 1997. His defense had argued that he was mentally ill and therefore should not be held fully accountable. However, the judge ruled that Miyazaki was capable of understanding his actions, and his calculated planning indicated a high level of awareness. On June 17, 2008, nearly 2 decades after his arrest, Miyazaki's sentence was finally carried out, and he was executed by hanging. With his death, the chapter of horror he unleashed finally came to an end. But the legacy of his crimes has not faded. His story is a chilling reminder of the hidden darkness that can lurk in individuals and the need for awareness around mental health and social isolation. The story of Tsutomu Miyazaki left a profound psychological impact on Japan. His crimes shook the public's sense of safety, leaving scars that would not heal easily. The case also shed a harsh light on the societal issues surrounding isolation and mental health. Many psychologists believe that Miyazaki's intense loneliness, compounded by his obsession with the violent side of otaku culture, drove him to his twisted actions. His case sparked nationwide discussions on how society should handle issues like social isolation and mental illness. The media's portrayal of him as an otaku killer also stigmatized anime and manga culture for years, fueling a negative view of the fandom. In many ways, Miyazaki's story has become a cautionary tale about the consequences of isolation, neglect, and unchecked mental illness.